in your possession and were reviewing 9 text messages from Randy Boissonneau's business partner, Anderson, 9 of which name a Randy, and 1 of which places this Randy in Vancouver at, coincidentally, the very same time that the Liberal cabinet was meeting.
Relevance. Come on.
Thank you, Mr. Turnbull. Mr. Cooper, there is a point of order that has been brought that's been discussed before. I would encourage you, I will ask you to stay on the topic that we're discussing. However, if this topic is of interest, you can always bring it up at other committees or on a 1064, just like it was done for this committee to meet on SDTC. I find it a little disrespectful to the time of the committee that you would be.
Just if I may reply to the point of order, the question, I haven't even had a chance to pose my question. If I had been given that opportunity, it would be apparent that it is in fact tied to the issue before this committee. Okay, well,
please tie it to the matter at hand.
Yes, yeah, because it goes to a question about whether, Commissioner, now that you have the 9 text messages naming Mr. Boissonneau or a Randy, we have not 1 smoking gun, but 9 smoking guns. So since July, have you opened an investigation into Randy Boissonneau contravening the Conflict of Interest Act?
Point of order. That is not relevant to the topic at hand, Chair. That has nothing to do with SDTC, which is the topic of the meeting today. I know Mr. Cooper and his Conservative colleagues have a hard time reading the motion, perhaps, but this is on SDTC.
The commissioner said...
Mr. Cooper doesn't like hearing from me because we've had many battles for many committees, but this is not relevant.
I know Mr. Turnbull wants to cover up...
Mr. Cooper, you don't have the floor. I've listened to the point of order brought forward, and it's, again, the same thing. It goes to relevance. I'm very liberal in how I interpret the topics that are discussed. I'm generous. However, I can't tie it to the subject at hand. And Mr. Perkins, with colleagues, brought us in the summer on a 1064 to take 3 hours of the committee time to discuss SDTC. I'd like it for us to discuss SDTC, so please, Mr.
Commissioner, are you investigating Mr. Boissonneau for violating the Conflict of Interest Act?
No.
You're not. Now, going back to the study at hand, you said, Commissioner, that what is the point? What is the point of investigating someone like Ms. Vershuren, who is no longer in her position? Here you have a sitting minister who potentially violated the Conflict of Interest Act with not 1, not 2, but 9 smoking guns, and 2 months later, you haven't bothered to do anything further. Is that what you're telling this committee?
First of all, as you know, before I investigate, I have to have reasonable grounds to investigate. What you have here is a bunch of emails. Can I finish? 9
emails that name a Randy, one that just coincidentally happens to connect him to being in Vancouver, and you say you don't have any grounds. I'm just shocked at the lack of interest, the lack of curiosity of a sitting minister who may have contravened the Conflict of Interest Act.
Mr. Cooper, I'll ask you to let the witness. I'll ask you to let the witness respond. But at the same time, this is so far from what we're supposed to be studying, Mr. Cooper. Have you read?
What's the point?
Have you read the motion?
He said that with respect to Ms. Vershuren. Now I'm talking about a minister who's in his office, and he's not interested in investigating the minister. He's not interested in investigating Ms. Vershuren. He's not interested in investigating the minister. What is he interested in investigating?
Yes,
is he interested in actually enforcing the Conflict of Interest Act?
Mr. Cooper, I understand you're not a regular member of this committee. I'd appreciate if maybe the Vice Chair, Mr. Perkins, could brief you on how we do things around this committee. But we don't interrupt each other. We don't interrupt the Chair for one. And we talk when we have the floor. I haven't given you the floor. There's a point of order that's been raised, a very valid one, on relevance, and I think your questions are just not relevant.
I know Mr. Turnbull wants to run interference to protect Randy Boissonneau, and it appears you do too as well, Chair.
Mr. Cooper, well, that is just However, peu importe, Monsieur Cooper, comment vous voulez l'exprimer. Moi,
regardless of how you put it, Mr. Cooper, I don't really care what subject you're wanting to pursue here. The committee is sovereign. If you want to pursue this topic, that's fine with me, but there's to be a motion voted in by the committee to determine that that would be the course of action.
Of questions you're asking, the Commissioner, we can. We just need to adopt a motion in that direction. This is not what we're supposed to be studying today. That's as easy as that. Madam Jones, on your point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And of course, my point of order is on relevance for probably the third time since we started a committee with some of the same speakers that have had to be raised. I just want to note for the record that there is always opportunity to approach the Commissioner on other issues outside of the committee forum, and today we're discussing a very different matter. So the Commissioner is here to answer questions on that matter. That is of vital importance to the committee, and I would really appreciate it if members could stick to the study and the topic that we're debating.
I agree, and so I'll ask you, Mr. Cooper, you still have 2 minutes 56 seconds to stay on the topic, and if you haven't seen the notice of motion or if your fellow members haven't shared it with you, please have a look at it. We came here during the summer on a 106.4 for that very special meeting. So, Mr. Cooper. Yes, Mr. Barrett.
So I did confer after you had instructed me to perhaps consult the notice of motion to confirm it hadn't changed, and the direction that Mr. Cooper went to deal with the analogous situation between what Mr. Perkins had raised and the response from the Commissioner, and the comparison to another decision of the witness was what we were looking at. I checked. The notice of motion is exactly the one that was passed in the summer, based on the motion that was passed at the 106.4 meeting in the summer. So you can rest assured that I did read it, and I understand that the standing orders are the same at all of the committees. So I appreciate the guidance on and being welcomed here, but with respect, Chair, the analogy that Mr. Cooper was drawing is absolutely not any further than the analogy that Mr. Turnbull was to drawing to SDTC in the House, which did not deal with the conflict of interest that we're talking about with Ms. Vershuren. So equal opportunity to draw analogies or to deal with subjects related to would be appreciated. That's all that we're looking for. But I can assure you, we were well consulted, and Mr. Perkins briefed us very well on the standard operating procedures here at your committee.
Appreciate that, Mr. Massé. Did you have something to add on this point of order?
Yeah, just a clarification of how much time we have left. I know the Conservatives are filibustering each other at the moment, but at the same time, we only have the witness here for a certain amount of time. I wanted to confirm how much time we have left in that.
Well, it depends. We have about until 4:35 with the witness. The points of order have eaten up a lot of time, but I can still give a minute to Mr. Cooper and then or to Mr. Brock if he wants.
Well, I'll turn it over to Mr. Brock.
Well, it depends. The time we're taking with the Commissioner will eat on the time we have with Madame Vershuren, which I think is of interest to the committee. Mr. Brock, go ahead.
For your appearance, I want to drill down and set the stage for Ms. Vershuren's appearance on the issue of her knowledge of recusal versus abstention. Now, she said quite proudly when she testified on the 12th and 14th of December 2023 that she's been a board member on various boards since she was 38 years of age. She's extremely familiar with conflict of interest policies. She's recused herself on numerous occasions. And then she said very proudly, I am sure that I didn't break ethics laws. That was December 14th, 2023, before the release of your report. Now, I know that she spoke with a compliance officer in your office on June the 4th, 2019. Obviously, the issues of recusal and abstention were discussed. So clearly, Commissioner, you weren't the compliance officer that she spoke with. Is that accurate? Okay. Are you satisfied that consistently your compliance officers would have explained in simple language the clear distinction between abstention and recusal?
I cannot answer. The only record we have is that she called and spoke to one of my officers. Unfortunately, that officer has since left, and the email in which she reported her conversation with Ms. Vershuren is no longer there, because we erased it once she left. So I honestly don't know what she discussed, to what extent she explained to what they talked about. All I know, it was a very short conversation between her and one of my officers.
Okay. But you'd have no reason to suggest that for any particular reason that compliance officer would have deviated against your office's policies in terms of having that discussion with ordering council appointments?
If Mrs. Vershuren had asked, what does recusal mean, she would have been told, leave the room. There's no question about it. Did she ask? I don't know. I have no evidence what the conversation was about and what it concerned. I mean, when a public officer is newly appointed, they may have all sorts of concerns, and that's why they phone us. It's unfortunate that I have no record of what was discussed.
Because I'm referring to page 30 of your report, paragraph 141, where you talk about the distinction between the two terms as explained in the Morneau 2 report. Very simple language. I think moving forward, you might want to, as a suggestion, it's obviously entirely up to you, Commissioner, but as a suggestion for future discussions with these appointees, having that simple language explained in light of the classic examples that she demonstrated, where she took legal advice as opposed to stating to you that she understood her compliance with not only policy, SDTC policy, but the Conflict of Interest Act were paramount. She's now relying upon extremely poor legal advice.
Thank you, Mr.
So I think it would be helpful in the future that that distinction is made known to all of those appointees.
As I mentioned in my opening remark, we just issued an information notice to everybody exactly on that point, and in plain language. Recusal means leave the room, physically or virtually.
Right.
You know, I can't say it cleaner than that.
I agree. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. MP Gahir for 5 minutes.